In this video, I'm going to show you how I used Iron Orchid Design paint inlays and molds to create some beautiful ornaments that have a blue hue to them. So let's go. The first thing is my base. This is a tag. It's a 6-inch tag, and I get these from my favorite wood source called Woodpecker's Crafts. I am going to link it in the comments so you can go check them out. Then I'm going to use a piece of the Delft blue inlay that was from the last Iron Orchid Design release. I want to just use a piece that's going to fit, so I'm going to put my tag on the inlay, and I'm just going to actually turn it over to the gridded side, and I'm going to use a pencil and I'm just going to trace around it and then cut it out. Now I'm ready to apply it to my tag. I want to apply it into paint, kind of becoming my favorite way to do it. You can use Rethunk Gunk or you can use a top coat, but you need something wet. So first I'm going to paint a coat, and I'm using the color Oyster on my tag. I'm not even going to wait for it to dry. I'm just going to get it covered. You can use a white or a lighter. You can use actually any color you want, but I'm using this color Oyster. So I'm just painting it to get my tag covered. Now I'm putting a second coat on. I didn't wait for the first coat to dry. Now I'm putting it on again, but this time I'm making it a little thicker. You can see I'm not worried about brush strokes, evening it out. I take my piece of inlay that I cut out, and I'm going to have the grid side up because the paint is on the other side of the paper. And the paint is embedded into this paper, and I want the paint to come off the paper and on to my tag. So I put it on, rub it out, make sure it has great contact, and then I'm going to spritz it with a little water from my Fine Mist spray bottle, and I'm going to take a paper towel and go over it again because I just want it to have good contact with that wet paint. I'm using the Rethunk Gunk color Oyster. Doesn't have to be chalk paint. Now I'm going to set that aside, and while that's drying, we're going to make our ornament. I am using the Iron Orchid Design Baubles mold. This was a limited edition Christmas release. The new Christmas release is about to come out, and Christmas releases are always limited edition. So if you see something you like, you do want to snag it, because a couple years from now, people are going to be selling them for a couple of $100s, and nobody's paying that. So I'm going to use mica powder, like you've seen me do before, to color my molds. I'm using this bright blue color and then some gold. And I just brush the mica powder in. I am going to use Amazing Casting Quick Cast Resin in this, but you can do this with air dry clay as well. And this is how you would dust your mold too. If you're using mica powder, you don't need to dust your mold with cornstarch or anything like that. Mica powder does the job. So I'm just putting the blue where I want it to be, and then I'm gonna put some gold accents. I want to make sure that I get all up the edges of the inside of the mold too, so all of my mold will have some color to it. But if I pop it out and I missed some parts with the color, you can go over it with the mica powder after the mold comes out. Now I want just a little more blue in it, so I'm going to dip my paintbrush into the mica powder and just tap it, and you can see where I have a little extra blue there. So we'll look for that when we unmold it. You'll see it turns out quite lovely. Now I'm going to turn my mold over and knock out some of that excess mica powder because I don't want it to cause bubbles with my resin. So I have my mold all dusted with mica powder and ready to go. Now it's time to mix the resin. I buy my resin in big bottles, and then I put it in my condiment bottles, and it has a part A and it has a part B, and you know the drill, equal parts of A and B. I put it into my little cup, and you can see that it's a little cloudy to start with. So I'm going to stir, probably about 30, maybe 45 seconds. I'm going to stir until that cloudiness is gone. Now this resin sets up really quickly, so you don't want to do it more than 30 to 45 seconds. You can see the cloudiness is gone. It is ready to pour. I carefully pour it into my mold, filling it right up to the edges. I try not to overflow it. I always have a little extra, so I'm ready to fill in some more molds to use at a later date. Now I have my mold filled, and I'm just going to take my little stick and just make sure that my resin is going to all of the corners and I haven't missed any areas. Now it's time for the fun part, to watch it set up. It's just like magic. It takes about 10 minutes, and you really want to be sure before you unmold it. You see around those edges, that takes the longest to dry, and so you just want to make sure that it's completely dry. But while it's drying, we're going to go back to our tag. It's dry now and ready to peel off the inlay. I'm going to spritz it with some water, and I'm going to give it about a minute to let that water soak into the paper, because I can reuse this inlay about 2 more times. I let it soak in because I want to tear this off in one piece, and look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? The pattern that was on the paint inlay is now beautifully on my tag. When I reuse this piece of inlay paper, my next application won't be as bright as this. It'll be a little less and then a little less, but you can still get application out of it. Now let's get back to that mold. It's time to demold, and this is my favorite part. When I pop it out and the color is all there. Are you ready? Ah, look how beautiful that is. Can you see in the middle where I dusted a little extra of that blue and what that did for it? Love it. Now the next step, and this is optional, but I'm going to use antique brown glaze because I want to make this look a little more vintage. The mold has all sorts of little spaces and crevices in it, and I want to get some antique dark glaze into all of those areas and, like I said, make it look a little more vintage. So this is a way to do that. I just simply brush it on and then wipe some of it off with my paper towel, and this is what I love. I think it also makes blue and the gold a little more vibrant. Next, I'm going to pull out the new metallic color pixie dust and dip my finger in it and just rub it over the high areas of the mold just to give it even a little more extra bling. Love the pixie dust metallic. I'm putting that on everything. Gorgeous, love it. Now it's time to put a little bit of the glaze, the antique dark glaze, brown glaze, on my tag. I'm just taking a brush. I'm taking the same brush that I used, so it just still has a little bit left on it, and I'm just putting it over the tag. Just to also give it a vintage look. Now I'm ready to apply my mold, and you know my favorite glue is the Titebond Quick and Thick. I go through a lot of this glue because I use it in all my craft classes as well. Put it on the back, and then apply it to the tag. Give it a little bit of pressure to make sure it has good contact, and then that's not going anywhere once it's completely dry. Now for this next step, I like to come back in, and again, this is optional, and I'm using my mica powder. I put a little bit of water on my table surface, and I dipped my paintbrush in the water to get my paintbrush wet, and then I dipped it in the mica powder. First, I'm going to go around the mold with the dark mica powder and kind of shade it in blue around the mold. I had a little glue there I needed to wipe off. And do a little shading around the mold with a darker blue, and then kind of use what's left over on the paintbrush to go over the rest of my tag and bring in that blue color. And this is optional. And if you wanted to use a different color besides the blue, I mean, you do it how you want to do it. But if you didn't have an inlay to use, an IOD inlay, you could totally use decoupage on your tag. Some gorgeous napkins out there. Use a napkin, do some decoupage. Now I like to give it a little more vintage vibe, and I love this ink pad color coffee. Got this at Hobby Lobby, so I just go around the edges a little bit more. We're almost there. Now you wanted to know how I got the glitter on there, the sparkle. So this is triple thick gloss glaze, it's called. It's really thick and can be nice and sticky, and it's going to give a nice little sheen and shine. So I put this all over my piece, and then I take the diamond dust. That's what I like. The diamond dust is a clear, very finely ground up actual glass, and I just sprinkle it all over, and look how beautiful. Now, I needed to paint the back of it, and I used the color blue lace. The back is painted. Now, one more thing is just a way to apply it. Tie it off to a package or hang it on the tree. You can make a bow. You can make that as elaborate as you want, but I want my ornament to be the star of the show, so I'm just going to take a piece of blue raffia and tie it through the hole. And now you could use this to tie on a gift, to give as a hostess gift, to hang on your tree. On the back of it, you could write a note, put the date. Who wouldn't love to get this as a gift? And there you have it. That's how I made mine. How will you make yours?